Martin Brundle is well placed in his current role as commentator and pit lane interviewer, after himself spending 2 stints in Formula One as a driver in the 80s and 90s. But apparently his knowledge of some other sports needs a little bit of work, as he recently made a pretty funny gaffe whilst performing his job as interviewer. Today we are discussing Brundle's hilarious and awkward interview gaffe, so don't go anywhere. First up, let's have a quick look at Brundle's career. Born in 1959, Brundle started his racing career at the age of 12, competing on grass tracks in the early 70s. He then moved into hot rod racing in 1975 before starting single-seater racing in Formula Ford in 1979. The following year, he won the BMW Championship before racing in the 81 British Saloon Car Championship alongside Sterling Moss. However, bigger and better things beckoned for the Brit, and 1982 brought with it a drive in Formula 3, almost winning the title the following year, finishing a close second to Brazilian legend Ayrton Senna. This led him to being noticed by Tyrrell and being offered a drive with them in Formula One in 1984, where he remained until 1987. However, by 1988, he had become disillusioned with racing in Formula One thanks to his involvement in underfunded teams and decided to seek a new challenge, making the move to sports cars, where he won the 1988 World Sports Car Championship. He also served as test driver for Williams during this period, winning the Daytona 24 Hours as well. A move back to F1 beckoned in 1992, where he stayed until retirement in 1996, but he never really troubled the championship title race. Post-racing, Brundle moved into commentary, working for broadcasters such as BBC, ITV, and Sky Sports. What did you guys make of Brundle's racing career? Let us know your thoughts below. Let's get into this hilarious interview then. Stay tuned. Of course, by now, Brundle has cemented himself as one of the leading Formula One broadcasters, but that doesn't insulate him from the odd hiccup. And at the recent Miami Grand Prix in the USA, Brundle made a pretty funny gaffe with a hilarious case of mistaken identity. He was attempting to find Kansas City Chiefs QB, Patrick Mahomes, who had been spotted around and about on the grid, and when he thought he had found his man, he instinctively called out Patrick. But unfortunately for Brundle, the man he was trying to grab a quick interview with wasn't the man who he had called out to. It was in fact Paolo Banchero, an up-and-coming basketball star from the Duke Blue Devils. Martin quickly realized his hilarious mistake, saying live on air, "It's not Patrick, that's why he ignored me," before going on to question Banchero as to who he was. Brundle can be forgiven for not knowing who Banchero is, as he is not yet a household name even in the States, but he did apologize to him all the same. Banchero is set to enter the NBA next season and is more than likely going to be in the top 3 picks in the upcoming draft, and Brundle went on to further embarrass himself as he didn't seem to know NBA favorite Dwayne Wade, who was close at hand as he tried to find anyone to talk to. Hilarious. Who else did Brundle get to chat to then? Let's see. Well, after confusing Banchero for Patrick Mahomes and not grabbing a quick interview with Wade, Brundle did finally get a few words with some celebrities, as the famous tennis sisters Venus and Serena Williams were on hand to give their opinions on the weekend. Brundle sidled up to the pair somewhat awkwardly and asked Venus who she was supporting across the weekend, but the older Williams sister didn't seem to understand the question, replying, "We love having Lewis and everyone here in Miami." Brundle then tried to get an answer out of Serena before quickly turning back to Venus, who replied, "Oh, what was the question?" Brilliant. Brundle's interviews hadn't gone that well up until that point, but he did find a bit of success a little later on after he spotted hip-hop icons Pharrell Williams and DJ Khaled. He also managed to get a word in with former England captain and Manchester United, Real Madrid, and PSG midfielder David Beckham, who had previously seemed to ignore the commentator. Of course, following his hilarious starting grid walk, Brundle trended on Twitter as social media lit up with hilarious comments of the Englishman's hilarious gaffes. What did you guys make of Brundle's interviewing? Pretty funny, right? Brundle has been speaking out recently about how he would like to be remembered. Of course, as you get to middle age and beyond, you start to think about how you will be remembered, and Martin Brundle has been speaking on the topic recently. As we mentioned, he had a pretty stellar racing career, but he is arguably these days better known for his commentary work. However, he did start 158 Formula One races, which is impressive in its own right, but his chaotic grid walks are now a thing of legend. He has been a fixture of the grid for 25 years, but is still often rather rudely ignored by some celebs, which of course you could question why they're even on the grid in the first place. But recently, Brundle has been in a reflective mood, revealing how it annoys him that he is now known for the grid walks, which he doesn't even like doing. He said, "There's a reason why I've never watched back an F1 grid walk in a quarter of a century of doing them. You have no idea how much I dislike doing them, but somehow these crazy moments have defined my professional career. Oh well, that's the way it is. He also went on to say how he scored 9 podiums as an F1 driver, as well as being a world sports car champion, a Le Mans winner, a Daytona winner, which suggests he wants a bit more respect on his name, and rightly so, right? What do you guys think? Next up, Martin has given his thoughts on the Lewis Hamilton radio message during the Spanish GP. As we all know too well, Lewis Hamilton has not enjoyed his best ever start to a season and is languishing in 6th place, 64 points off the pace. And Brundle has suggested his message over the radio at last weekend's Spanish GP has given a pretty clear indication about his frame of mind at the moment. Hamilton collided early on with Haas driver Kevin Magnussen, and shortly after the collision could be heard over the radio appearing to urge the team to retire the car. He said, "I would save the engine if I was you guys. I'm sorry." Of course, most people were in agreement that the crash wasn't Hamilton's fault, but it was his lack of desire to carry on that had many people questioning his mind frame. He had to pit for a puncture, as well as Magnussen, and was, of course, well behind at that point. Hamilton did, however, make up ground superbly to finish in a fantastic 5th position, but of course had to lift and coast towards the end thanks to a DNF risk. But whilst his performance was praised by most, Brundle said he was concerned with what he had heard at the start. Lewis's radio call after falling to the back of the field with a puncture, basically wanting to stop and save the power unit mileage, was alarming in that it gave us the true picture of how little he's been enjoying this season. Presumably 65 laps later, he was somewhat more satisfied after showing great pace, Brundle said. What did you make of Lewis's performance? And finally, Brundle has had his say on Monaco this weekend, and specifically Charles Leclerc. Leclerc was the early pace setter this season, but has since been reeled in by defending champion Max Verstappen, and Martin Brundle fears he could slip further off the pace this weekend in Monaco. Monaco is of course one of the highlights of the Formula One calendar, but Leclerc himself doesn't have the best record here, and Brundle has thrown down a warning that if he takes it lightly again this weekend, he risks falling further behind in the race for the title. The Ferrari man has never finished his home GP, and even crashed when driving the course a few weeks ago in Niki Lauda's famous Ferrari. And Brundle spoke out about Leclerc's chances, saying, "Leclerc always pushes everything to the limit, including himself. This circuit can punish you hard for that. He has experienced that himself several times. You have to drive here with a completely different mentality. The problem is that you crash if you take too much speed into one of these corners. You can't do anything if you take the curb with too much speed. The little mistakes he still makes sometimes are magnified here, and he has to watch out for that this weekend. And the pressure is now on for Leclerc, who doesn't have the championship winning experience of Verstappen or Hamilton. Who is your tip for this weekend's race? As always, thanks for joining us, and remember to stop by again next time for some more fun and games. And don't forget to share today's video with your F1 loving pals, as well as subscribing to our channel. Bye guys.